Hi there, welcome to my YouTube channel. My very first video shows some of the techniques I have developed over the years in order to create watercolor paintings on surfaces other than paper, such as natural and artificial nails. I always start with Madame Glam's Perfect White and Velvet Matte Top Coat, which give the surface enough texture for watercolors to hang on to. Today I'm painting a brick wall. I first gave shape to each individual brick in a watered-down shade from the palette I previously prepared. At this stage, I'm using the No. 1 Series 7 Winsor and Newton brush, ideal for large strokes. I now switch to the No. 0 brush and paint a very light gray in between bricks. The 00 brush is the one I chose to start creating texture and volume. Either with the tip or the side of the brush, I'm adding color to each brick. Because watercolors can always be reactivated, especially on nails or artificial nails, colors are added sequentially on each brick to be adjusted later. This is the second brick wall nail I'm painting. For the first, I had a photo reference showing old weathered bricks, but for this one, I'm improvising. This gives me enough freedom not to worry about specifics. Different colors from the palette are being added gradually and allowed to dry as I go along. Once I've reached the top, I rinse and wipe the brush so it can now be used to move some pigments around, starting again at the bottom and making my way up. The brush is damp but not really wet. Too much water would lift the pigments and ruin the painting. As there is no reference, I'm just going with the flow. We all know bricks show a whole spectrum of nuances within themselves and relative to each other. I edited out the numerous times the brush had to be rinsed and wiped, but that doesn't mean that part isn't important. A clean brush allows you to avoid contamination between colors, shades, and values. It's time to add darker shades, which I started doing off camera with the No. 1 brush. Some bricks are now much darker than others. The 000 brush comes in to add some details with darker shades randomly. I'm starting at the bottom and working my way up. With a rinsed and wiped brush, I'm going over the dark strokes, spreading the pigments and fading them out. Volume and depth are slowly working their way into the painting. Did you know watercolors weren't opaque? Which means you need to always remember to place your colors going from light to dark. I just switched to a No. 0 brush from Roubloff. Its very fine point allows for better control over details. Darker strokes are added randomly, but mainly on the lower parts and sides of the bricks. They'll be creating the illusion of shade, which of course occurs when an object is blocking the light, and light usually comes from above. Just as before, I rinsed and wiped the brush so I could come back to each stroke, reactivate it with the damp brush, and move pigments around. Oil and acrylic paints, pastels, inks, watercolors, all are made with pigments, but each uses a different medium to hold those pigments. In watercolors' case, water is obviously the medium, which makes them simpler to use. No need for solvents, no strong smells, minimal cleanup, and so on. But they're also technically very challenging. Pigments are carried by water. Once the painted surface dries up, only pigments are left. Normally, they would be gradually absorbed by the paper. On nails or tips, they're barely holding on. Therefore, the brush must often become as light as a feather, barely touching the pigments to spread them around or bring them together into sharper lines. You can already see quite clearly how the dark strokes, once blurred, blend in to create recesses and cracks in the cement or bricks. You can also see texture defined by shade variations on the bricks as well as on the cement. Wherever the cement is grayed, your brain tells you that its roughness has retained dust. Isn't it absolutely fascinating? I sometimes feel that painting nails with watercolors is like sketching, where you're constantly redefining volumes, shapes, light and shade, except pencils are replaced with brushes. Other times, when very little water is involved, it feels more like oil painting, where the medium has its own texture and viscosity. One thing's for sure, it's always enjoyable. From here on, with about 5 minutes left, you will see much of the same. I am alternating brushes depending on the level of detail, and I'm moving pigments around rather delicately. At times, I add a little color here, or I pick some up with the brush, but my goal remains the same: painting a true-to-life brick wall, weathered out, mysterious, and endearing.